What's the best apple to plant for deer? That's really a loaded question because there is no one right strain of apple to plant for deer. The best apples to plant for deer it's based on a number of things, and I know this by experience. It's a lot of trial and error. There are literally dozens of strains of apples you can plant depending upon where you live. The first thing you have to understand is you have to plant a tree that is, well, trees, plural, that are hardy for the region where you live. I live on the northern cusp of range, and I want cold hardy trees. I want trees that are going to survive. Apple trees are an investment. You've got to plant trees and think years out, 4, 5, 6, 10 years out. What's that tree going to be if it's going to survive? Number one is where you live. Number two is the flowering rates. You need different strains of apple trees to pollinate. They got to be cross-pollinated. Yeah, there's a couple strains that are self-pollinating. I don't worry about those. I want really good trees. I'm going to plant several varieties so they can cross-pollinate. There's about 7 flowering zones for apple trees. And everybody thinks, oh, you should really stagger that, and because you want apples in early season and mid-season and late season. I'm not saying that doesn't work, but normally guys that say that haven't planted apple trees and they don't know too much about apple trees. In a perfect world, that would be great. In reality, what I want to do is I want to plant trees that are going to be in overlapping pollination zones, meaning that these trees will be pollinating within a week or two of each other, and therefore you're going to get a good pollination rate on your trees. The other thing you want to keep in mind is you want to plant, like I say, you need several varieties. Don't just plant 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 trees if you can. Obviously, quality is the best thing, but quantity is going to help you on apple trees. But that being said, don't go plant 20 or 30 or 50 trees if you got that much land at one time. You do want to pace yourself out. So what I recommend, if you have the land, if let's say you can plant in, I call it an orchard, let's say you can plant an orchard of 20 or 30 trees, I'm going to plant 5 to 8 one year, 5 to 8 the next year. I'm going to space it out that way. And I'm going to stagger those trees that I'm not planting all haloreds in a row and all galas in a row, or all, state fair trees, or these are Wolf River trees. I'm not going to plant a bunch of those in the same area because they're not going to get good pollination rates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stagger those trees. That's going to allow the pollination to occur, and it's going to allow those trees probably better survival. One last tip I'm going to give you when planting apple trees: if you think you got them planted too far away, you probably don't. They need to be within 50 feet of each other for pollination. So if I have, let's say, a Wolf River tree here and a halored tree over there, 50 feet is about the maximum, for cross-pollination. But if you plant them too close, and these 2 trees here are actually planted too close, they're mature trees now. They're both Wolf River trees. The previous landowner cut down the other apple trees, so I'm going to have a really hard time pollinating these trees, so I have to plant some other trees to get some pollination. Give yourself enough space. I recommend 25 feet between trees. That's going to allow sunlight to get in there, especially when you prune them, and it's going to allow the bees to do their work once spring comes.
Today, guys, I want to talk about the anatomy of a miss with archery gear, and it really fits well with this Oracle 2 Burris bow sight. And why do guys miss? If you think about it, a lot of times a person is up in a tree stand, and rather than bend at the waist, they just drop their arms. So they're switching to that anchor point, they're going to hit high, right? A lot of stuff goes in through your mind that you're not thinking about. That one, there is no room. I mean, if you do that, no matter what bow sight you are using, even if it's on, you're going to probably shoot high. But the other reason why people miss is because they don't range that whitetail, or they do range it and they're so excited in their emotions, like, oh, the deer's 35 yards away. And then they put it down. Meanwhile, the deer's coming closer and closer, and whatever, the hunter's just thinking 35, 35, 35. I'm going to shoot him right there. He puts his 35-yard pin on it, shoots, and the arrow flies over its back. I mean, it's common. You hear it all the time in deer camps. Well, that's why you buy one of these things. Now you set this up, and you never have to worry about that. When you hit the button, it's going to range that whitetail. It's going to put the dot exactly where you need to aim. And as long as you remember to bend at the waist if you're up in a tree stand, you're going to hit that exact point that you're aiming at. Therefore, it eliminates that. I'm a big rangefinder guy. You know, I'm going to have my rangefinder in my hand. I'm checking, I'm looking where the deer ends, and then you got to always slide it in. I'm always worried about missing my pocket when you slip it in. Now I don't have to worry about that. I'm just ranging the deer as it's coming in. I can be at full draw. I don't have to worry about it. So therefore, you're probably not going to speed up your shot. You're going to have more time for everything. Check out the Oracle site. It's super easy. I do not have it Velcroed on, but you're going to Velcro the button, the turn on button, wherever you want, probably on your index finger. I'd probably even put it behind. But then once you set up, you're going to dial it in at 20 yards, get it set at 20 yards. Then you're going to go back to 30 to 35 yards and put in your second point in. And then you're going to put in a third point 10 yards further than the first point that you put in. What's different about the Oracle 2 versus the Oracle 1, you now have the ability to set up 4 different points, aiming points. Once that's set in, you're going to have a well-defined curve because it's going to learn the speed of your bow, it's going to learn the speed of your arrows, the weight of your arrows, and then it's going to adjust that. Now, what's really cool for you guys that are hunting out west, because I know some of you guys are whitetails, you're shooting big, heavy arrows, right? The guys out west are shooting the lighter arrows. If you're one of those guys that does both, you can set up 2 different arrows. So it'll ask you right on it. You can set up one arrow for a lightweight, therefore I'm shooting extremely flat for out western distances, and you can do a second arrow that's for heavy arrows. But if you're looking for a bow sight that's totally going to eliminate the guesswork of yardage, this is it. Check it out.